Hi, welcome back to Mind Control, where we inspire and motivate you. Hope you enjoy the video.
Through all the things I've gone through in my life, I had a lot of downs. How did I keep the faith? There was a couple of reasons. Number one, I know from living that if you quit whatever you're trying to accomplish, if you quit, whatever you were trying to accomplish can never happen. There's not even a remote possibility. If you quit, there is no chance of it popping back up again, coming back later. Quitting is guaranteed failure. Now, when you're trying, you're going to fail. But quitting, just stopping, that was the number one thing I understood. And then number two, you have to make sure that your dreams, your aspirations and goals are so big that not accomplishing them is not an option.
And then the other layer of it is you're probably going to have some suffering to get there or some sacrifice to get there. And so once you've embraced and decided that this suffering, this sacrifice you're making is an indicator of progress. It's an indicator of obsession. Suffering and sacrifice and hard work is an indication of progress towards our dreams. The lack of sacrifice, the lack of suffering in our lives, its removal, its non-existence also equates to a non-existence of a great life, a non-existence of a dream happening, a big one anyway.
You have to want something so big that it wakes you up in the middle of the night. You have to want something so big that you think about it all the time. You have to want something so big that it drives you to wake up when you don't want to. It keeps you up at night when you long been sleepy. It makes you show up, do things you wouldn't normally do. It requires extra. If you want to be extraordinary and not ordinary, if you want to be ordinary, live your life.
And so embrace the fact that you're going to have to sacrifice and suffer to some extent. Once you've embraced that it's going to happen, it's almost not that bad. It's kind of like those of you that are fit. You've sort of accepted that before you go to the gym and get there, you're going to have to suffer. And we go anyway. It becomes a habit. No one goes into a gym thinking, I'm not going to have to sacrifice or suffer. There'll be no discomfort or no pain. Yet in life, outside of that one area, most of us are worried about suffering. We're afraid of it. When we're suffering and sacrificing, we wonder whether it's worth it. We wonder whether we're supposed to. We wonder whether sacrifice or setbacks or suffering is a sign it's not our real dream, don't we? See, at the gym, you'd never think, oh, I'm going through some pain and discomfort. This must be a sign I shouldn't be at the gym. You'd never think that. So while it's happening, there's no part of you that says, this isn't right. In fact, the indication of the pain and sacrifice and sweat, don't you feel better at the gym? You're like, wow, I really sacrificed today. I really suffered. So in that area, we all know to the extent we suffer and sacrifice is to the extent we grow. And your body is a metaphor for the rest of your life. But the rest of our life, every time we sweat, every time we sacrifice, every time we suffer, we don't do what we do at the gym. We start saying, well, wait a minute. Maybe I'm not supposed to be doing this. Maybe I'm not cut out. Maybe it's not my destiny. Maybe I just can't do it. It's the most unbelievable, ridiculous conclusion we draw, but it's what everybody does, which is another form of distraction, is doubt. Another form of distraction is just doubt, and doubt comes from the suffer. It comes from a loss. It comes from fear. It comes from the sacrifice. And so just remember this, you're supposed to suffer and sacrifice. So let me ask you a question. What are you willing to risk in order to make your dream come true? Nothing ventured, nothing gained. You're going to take a risk. Maybe it's financial. Maybe it's a risk of time. Maybe it's a risk at your job. Maybe it's a risk of looking bad. Maybe it's a risk of failing, of falling on your face, of going broke, of going through pain, of going through anxiety. What are you willing to risk in order to win? The price you will pay for not making your dream come true is far greater than the one that you will pay to make it come true. You'll pay that one the rest of your life. And so ask yourself what you're willing to risk. What's the price you're willing to pay?
Never give up until, however long that is, step by step, piece by piece, book by book. Go for it. Don't miss the chance to grow. And resolve that you'll pay the price until you learn, change, grow, become. Then you'll discover some of life's best treasures when you pay that price.
Because what most people do when they're trying to chase their dream or their big outcome, the whole time they're negotiating the price in their head. Should I continue to do it? Is it worth it? I don't know if I can continue anymore. It's getting higher, and that price is failure. That price is setback. That price is looking back. That price can be financial, literally a physical price. And what happens is, if you don't negotiate that price in advance, it's going to steal your focus and energy and become another distraction. One of the great distractions of chasing our dreams is this thing that goes off in our head as we're negotiating the price we're paying. Is it getting too high? Is it too much? And you'll have people in your ear, it's too big a sacrifice. You're going through too much. And you begin to negotiate it in your mind. It distracts all your focus. You can't be executing and negotiating simultaneously. If you're in your head negotiating and negotiating and negotiating, you can't execute. So negotiate it now. Negotiate it with me now. What are you willing to pay? For me, when I'm after something big, as long as it's legal, ethical, and moral, I'll sacrifice everything else. But I will not sacrifice anything legal, anything unethical, or anything immoral. But beyond that, I'm going to get it. And I know that negotiation comes up front. I accept the suffering. I accept the sacrifice. I know the sacrifice is far smaller than the one I'll pay if I don't do it. And I eliminate distractions, and I go freaking get what I want in my life, just like you can. And this needs to be your recipe as well. Successful people don't negotiate the cost of something. They negotiate whether it's worth it. What I'm telling you is, if you really want something bad enough, it's worth it. It's worth it. So start to feed yourself the worth question over and over and over again, not the cost question. Cost is a distraction. Worth is a focus mechanism. This is so worth it. It's so worth it. It's so worth it. Focuses you. Cost distracts you.
And a friend of mine said, you know when people change? And I said, no. He said, when they get to the point when they say, I've had it. I've had it. I can do better than this.
He was in the hog pen. He was broke. He had lost everything. He was deranged and deprived and distraught. But the Bible said he came to himself in this deplorable situation. He came to himself. He didn't get any money in the mail. He didn't meet any fine person that built up his self-esteem. This was an inside job. He came to himself, said, wait a minute, I'm better than this. And the moment he made up his mind to get up, he got up. And I want to tell you something today. The moment you make up your mind to get up, you can get up. And no devil in hell, no system, no government, no power, no boss, no community, or anything else can hold you. Once you are free in your mind, you are free. The Bible says it is with the mind that we serve the Lord. This amazing piece of hard drive that God put in between our ears and is so programmable and so impressionable that there is a constant war between good and evil for the code to be able to program your mind. There's constant war, constant conflict going on as to who gets into your database and who is going to program your mind. Because all that you will do or not do, have or not have, accomplish or not accomplish, will be a direct derivative of what's going on inside of your mind. For it says, as a man thinketh in his heart, so is he. Your thinking has all the world to do with where you are. Your attitude has all the world to do with your altitude. So if you don't get clear thinking on an issue, you won't be able to develop in that area. Most generally, when we talk about that warfare and dealing with the images in our mind, we generally think in terms of sin. But I want to challenge you to understand that you have more to deal with in the warfare in your mind than just sin. You have depression, you have fear, you have phobias, you have insecurities, you have unbeliefs. There are a whole lot of dysfunctional behaviors that were inherently passed on to us, but these are the reverberating consequences of an act of sin that leave you struggling in areas that people cannot see. Lay your hand on your head. Say, this is an awesome machine. I wonder if it's being underutilized.
That's what makes us different than dogs and animals, birds, and cats and spiders and alligators. That's what makes us different than all other life forms. The ability to think, the ability to use your mind, the ability to process ideas, and not just operate by instinct. You can order the entire process of your own life. And we do that by the way we think. We do that by exercising our mind. We do that by processing ideas and come up with a better philosophy, a better strategy for our life, goals for the future, plans to achieve those goals. All this comes from developing our philosophy. Think, use your mind, come up with ideas, and strengthen your philosophy. That is the major challenge of life. You don't need a better economy. You don't need better seed and soil. In fact, when it comes to seed and soil and rain and sunshine and seasons and the miracle of life, that's all you got. Now, what if you blame this stuff? Then you're blaming all you got. Guess what I had to do at age 25 in order to change my own future? I had to change my mind. I had to change my thinking. I had to change my philosophy. I was messed up on what was causing my problem. Once I got rid of that and started going for where the real problem was, which was me, I'm telling you, my life exploded into change.
God may be giving you more to work with than what you are working with at this time. You may have far more megabytes and more things that you can potentially do than what you're doing right now. That's why I don't like to hang with low-thinking people, because they'll make you underutilize what God has given you. You need somebody to challenge you that you could be doing more than what you're doing right now. You could have more than you have right now. You could go further than you're going right now. And somebody's got to be bold enough to look you in the face and empower you to go into the enemy's camp and take back what he stole from you. Look at somebody and say, it's time for a change. What stops us from making the changes that we need in our behavior, in our situation, it's the mind. I understand that there are about 1 million what are described as sensory receptors in the brain. Sensory receptors in the brain. That through the brain sensory receptors, we're able to gather and maintain data. About 1 million sensory receptors in your brain. Huge operation in your brain. I just see it as a big electronic board with all kinds of connections going on in your head, whereby you are able to gather and galvanize data. About 1 million receptors, sensory receptors, that are constantly gathering information. While I'm speaking right now, they're operating right now in your brain, making you able not only to hear what I say, but assess my movements, and you're gathering expressed and implied information because you got it like that. You can do 2 or 3 things at the same time, 4 or 5, 6 things at the same time, and gather all of that information all at the same time, because your mind is awesome, you're bright, you're brilliant, you are fearfully and marvelously made. You're an awesome computer full of all kinds of information all the time, spouting out data, thinking and speaking all at the same time. I'm thinking about one thing and speaking something else all at the same time, because we got it like that. Look at somebody say, I'm bad. But you have 10 billion sensory receptors that work in your imagination. But those 10 billion sensory receptors that you have make your imagination so keen that you have all of these impressions that come through your ability to conjure up information through the invisible realm, and it can become more real to you, and that's what causes some people to become sick. It's when the imagined becomes more real than reality, and that's what causes them to have certain dysfunctions that cause them to be diminished in their thinking. I was watching Ray Charles. They were going through Ray Charles' life, and they were talking about Ray Charles, who was blind, couldn't see, and yet he learned how to compose music and read music by Braille. And he could write music by Braille. So he wasn't just some gifted blind person who could play. He was intelligent, he was intellectual, he was gifted, he was creative. He could read and write and compose music. Even though he couldn't see and he had lost the benefit of one of those devices that bring information to his sensory receptors, he began to rely on his invisible, the 10 billion sensory receptors to gather information through other channels. Interestingly enough, he said something that was so harmonious with my message, I thought I would include it. He said that even though he had gone blind at 7, at 5 years old, he'd seen his brother drown to death in a small basin of water, and by 7 he'd gone blind, if I remember correctly. And by the time he was 12 or so, both his parents were dead. He was blind, he'd seen a murder, and his life was off and seemingly out of control, and music became an outlet for his spirit and for his soul. And he says, even though he couldn't see, he could hear the imagined music in his head so strongly that when he got ready to compose a piece, he says he didn't need a piano. He could compose an entire piece in his head because the accuracy of the music he heard in his head was more real to him than the music he played with his fingers. So what's going on in your head often can become more real than what's going on in your life. Well, how do we get this information? We get this information through conditioning, through imagination, through suggestions, through implications, and all of this affects who we are and how we function as individuals. Are you following what I'm saying? That's why you have to watch what you do with your eye gate and your ear gate and your mouth gate, because all of these are gates to the soul whereby the enemy, evil or wickedness or righteousness comes before you. And the images that you have seen have all the world to do with who you are right now. Are you following what I'm saying?
We'd like to thank you so much for watching till the end. Don't forget to share your thoughts in the comments section. Please also like, subscribe, and share this video with your friends and families. Please watch our other motivational videos. Thank you again.
Men are hunters. What we enjoy is the chase of the hunt. Now, after we capture you, we're okay with that. We're okay with that. But after day 1, you're not captured. We still hunting for you. If you break down after day 1 and you're not in a serious relationship right now, I want you to start thinking about the pattern. If you break down too quick on the guy, what is it? What does he have? What does he have? See, you may not like what I'm about to tell you, but men are aesthetic. We're just aesthetic creatures. I love it when my wife gets jazzed up. I love it. Now, if I come home 15 nights in a row, which I do come home very late, and she's already in her favorite little gray sweat outfit, and that's all I'm seeing for 15 days, you know, I say something to my wife. I said, baby, we need to get up in the morning, have breakfast together, go somewhere, do something. But I tell her that, and she ain't got no problem. Okay, what you want to do? Because every now and then, I want to see who I ask to marry me. I don't want to come out here and bust my ass, and I don't get to see this person no more. No, what the happened to who I married? What I'm out here working for, I'm busting my ass. She's the same person, but still, you can be cute for you, that's cool. But your man also needs you to be cute for him. But let me ask you something. You have something you require of your man too. And you want it from him whether he feel like it or not now. If you want your man to be a certain way for you, he got to be that for you, don't he? If he don't, you're going to have a problem with him. Whatever it is, whether you want to see him dressed up every now and then, or you want to see him come home at a decent hour, or you want to see him be a better provider, whatever it is you want from him. You want him to treat your kids better, whatever it is you want. He got to do it now.
I should love myself. I can love myself, and so can you. I'm not different. I'm not special, but I am deserving of love. And if you can see that, you too deserve to be yourself and be happy today, you too could be happy in your relationships. It doesn't matter who you are, what you've been through, where you come from. You can decide today to take action and start loving your true self and embracing it. Because then you'll be free to love unconditionally. You'll gain the ability to gift that power to others and change every single person in your life. There would be no problem that's too big or too hard to solve. No struggle too difficult to overcome. No crisis too overwhelming not to band together and prevail. No person too broken that cannot be mended. Change, real change, simply starts with you.
I know.
True love. True love.
You outsource most of your sanity because it's too complicated. And so what you do is your parents raise you to be vaguely acceptable to other people. And then you're surrounded by other people your whole life. And then every time you go off the rails a little bit, even just a little bit, people signal to you. Like you make a joke, it's not that funny, and people don't laugh. And you think, oh, well, I should probably rethink my sense of humor a little bit or pay more attention. Or you tell a rambling story and you notice that everyone's like lost in the distance. And so if you're civilized enough so that people don't shun you and you have people around you, then they're going to be always telling you how to not be too insane. Well, if you're alone, you drift. You drift, and you'll drift in the direction of your biggest weakness. And so, there are some people, maybe they're introverted and disagreeable. They're not cut out for a lot of social contact. But we're social animals, man, right to the core. And it's a suboptimal solution for the vast majority of people. I think that people are having a harder time finding, let's call them more permanent relationships, is because it's become increasingly easy to have fleeting, casual sexual relationships. I mean, Tinder is a revolution, right? It's a revolution in sexual behavior, and it's certainly not obvious that it's Is it a social thing? Is it just technology? Is this what people want to be doing? Because you think the fleeting, in some ways,
but the technology has enabled this fleeting sexual activity.
Definitely. Okay. Definitely. And that's, but we don't want to underestimate how radical a technology that is. That's especially for men.
I do feel that deep down that all these people, men and women alike, are always longing for something more meaningful.
Well, I think that that's generally the case. I mean, part of the reason for a relationship is sexual contact, obviously. Well, that's you don't necessarily need a relationship for that. But that's not the reason to be with someone. The reason to be with someone, when there's a lot of them. So one is, well, kids who have two parents do far better, period. The data on that is crystal clear. Doesn't mean that there aren't many single parents who struggle to do a wonderful job. Yeah. That's not the same thing. It's an average issue. So you need, plus, it's a lot of work to have kids. You kind of need to divide up the labor, especially in the first year or two, because the woman is completely overwhelmed in the first year, and she needs somebody around to take care of her while she's taking care of the kid, fundamentally, or at least that's the way it looks to me. So there's that. You need a stable basis for children, and it takes them a long time to mature, and they need to learn that relationships are trustworthy, right? So there's utility and stability there. But then also, you kind of want to tangle your life together with someone, because you have someone it's like two ropes that are tangled together. It's stronger, especially during times of weakness. And you have two brains instead of one, and that actually turns out to be really helpful when things are complicated. And it builds a solidity into your life and a reality into your life to have someone who's along with you on this very long voyage. And so I think that deepens your life in a way that isn't really possible with fragmentary relationships as a single person.
Definitely.
And then there's more to it than that. It's like, I think of wrestling. There's this scene in the Old Testament where Jacob wrestles with an angel. He's wrestling with God, actually, which is quite an interesting, that's what Israel means, right? Wrestling with God. Yeah, that just blew me away when I learned it. It's so
is that true?
The true people of Israel are those who wrestle with God.
Yeah,
it's not believe exactly. It's a whole different thing, man. It's a whole different thing.
Isn't it like fear from God? What it means? That's what I thought.
Well, it did from the work I did in the last couple of months looking at this, and I looked into it quite deeply. It does mean wrestling, essentially, and it does derive from that scene in the Old Testament where Jacob wrestles with God. That's when he gets the name Israel. And his hip is dislocated, right? Permanently. He has a permanent limp after that. It's no joke. But I think of marriage the same way. Like people think, well, they lived happily ever after. It's like, that's not what you want in a marriage. You want someone to contend with, because you learn through that wrestling. You know,
Sure.
like you learn where you're an idiot and where you should stop being, and vice versa.
Yeah.
So that's the spiritual aspect of marriage. It's the fact that you have to contend with someone under all sorts of circumstances. Theoretically, is what would you say? It's a manner of promoting psychological, or you could say spiritual growth, and it's genuine. You know, that's why marriage is a sacrament in most human communities, right? It's stamped both by the state and by the sacred authorities, because it's not just a physiological union. That's what animals do. And I mean, there's nothing wrong with the physiological union, but it has to be placed in the context of everything else a human being is. And I do think it's dreadful for people not to have that. And
Do you think it's become harder for people to have meaningful, lasting relationships, or has it always been this hard? I feel like I thank God that I'm not dating now, because I feel like it seems like it's miserable out there right now.
well, it's
to
hard
try to meet people.
It is hard although, you know, it's easier to meet people because there's more ways of meeting them.
Right.
But the ways of meeting them are more shallow. In my clinical practice, I would say that the rise of the internet dating option has actually overall been good for people who are looking for a partner.
My mama was a Sunday school teacher. I know a lot about the Bible. I just don't know what nothing is. I can give you 5, 6 scriptures. That's all I know. But I know 5, 6 good ones, though. Them 5, 6 got me here today. I'm going to give you 2 of them right now. You know the biggest scripture that changed my life? You have not because you ask not. I can't even tell you how big that is. This is the coldest thing I'm going to tell you today. You have not because you ask not. Most people don't have the life of their dreams because you ain't never asked God, could you have it? You've been trying to do it yourself. You've been trying to figure it out for yourself, how that's been working out for you. I just told you earlier, you can't figure it out. Ain't no scripture nowhere tell you to figure it out. What you trying to figure your life out for? You ain't got nothing to do with tomorrow. You can't change the past. So what you tripping with your life for? You have not because you ask not. Most people ain't rich today because you ain't never asked God, could you be rich? I ask God every day. At the lowest point of my life, I ask God every day, could I be rich? Because I had it up to here with being poor. I lived in a car, dog. I ain't had no backyard. I ain't had no TV. I ain't had no phone. I ain't got no sink. I ask God every day, could I be rich? So I cut a deal with him. I told God, if you let me make it, when I get there, I'm going to tell everybody it was you. Here I am, and it was him. Now you got another route you want to take, go ahead. See, the thing about having faith is you don't need nobody's permission. You don't have to get accepted into the course. You ain't got to clear it with nobody. He's available. I got rich, and I'm not bragging, but I'm just telling you, I got rich because I asked. She asked me today, she said, is there anything about you that we don't know? I was at the doctor's office the other day. On the medical form, they say, are you allergic to anything? And I didn't check no block. But the nurse always go over everything to make sure. Mr. Harvey, are you allergic to anything? I said, yes. She said, it's not checked in the block. I said, because y'all probably ain't got that in here. Are you allergic to anything? I said, yes. She said, you didn't check the block. I said, because y'all ain't probably got that in here. She said, sir, we have every medication known to man in here. I said, I thought you just asked me why I'm allergic to something. I'm not allergic to medicine. She said, what you allergic to? I said, poverty.
When Dr. Norman Vincent Peale spoke, he gave me goose pimples. When Earl Nightingale said, all of us are self-made, but only the successful will admit it. Mr. Swiderski. Yeah. Mr. Swiderski, family that we worked for in Miami Beach, he did not know why I spent so much time shining his shoes, because he listened to the strangest secret in the world. as he was playing those tapes called Lead the Field, I was hearing these things, and then when I shined, he said, well, that's good enough. I said, well, let me dust. Oh, but look here, the books are crooked. And I went in there early and messed them up so I could stay. Because I wanted to be in there while he was taking this time. He was a multimillionaire. My dream and vision was one day I'm going to be a millionaire like Mr. Swiderski. One day, because I was young and ignorant. I didn't know I couldn't do it. I didn't know I couldn't have a mansion. I was like the bumblebee. Bumblebee isn't supposed to fly because the body is too large to be held up by his little puny wings. But the bumblebee doesn't know it. It's intelligently ignorant. So it keeps on flying anyhow.
This lady came to the well beaten down, unworthy, thinking that she would always be looked down on, defeated. But she left that day with a new passion, a new self-image. She saw herself as valuable, redeemed, forgiven. She ran back and told the whole town to come see this man, Jesus. They all flooded out to see him. She didn't just get changed, but she changed her city. Now she was no longer looked down on, she had respect. She was no longer broken, unworthy, she felt valuable. She knew she was a child of the Most High God. What's interesting is Samaria wasn't the shortest route from Judea to Galilee. There was a quicker way, but Jesus said, I must go through Samaria. I can hear the disciples saying, Jesus, that's a long way. It's hot. We're already tired. Let's take the shortcut. Jesus said, no, there's a woman there I need to see. Someone that's made mistakes. Someone that's off course. Someone that's been rejected, that feels forgotten about. I have to tell her what I'm about to do. This woman came from a culture that worshiped idols. Their gods were made out of stone, no life, no response. Jesus showed up and said, I'm going to give you living water. They were used to dead gods. He said, I'm the Messiah, I'm the living God. You may have some big obstacles. You don't see how you can overcome the sickness, how you can break the addiction, how you can accomplish your dream. But if you only knew who our God is, He's not a weak, lifeless, limited God that used to live, a statue that we can reverence. Our God is alive. He still parts Red Seas. He still brings dead things back to life. He still protects in the fiery furnace. He still makes rivers out of deserts. He still brings walls down. He still defeats giants. He still breaks chains in the midnight hour. He's still a way maker, a promise keeper, a miracle worker. Like this woman, life may have thrown you a curve. You've settled where you are, thinking this is as good as it gets. Just live with the addiction. Just accept those bad breaks limited you. That person that walked away soured your life. God is saying, if you only knew what I'm about to do. I'm about to promote you in the pandemic. I'm about to honor you in front of your enemies. I'm about to heal you despite what the report says. I'm about to free you from what looks permanent. I'm about to bring someone into your life better than you've imagined. If you only knew what God was up to, you'd get your fire back. Those bad breaks didn't stop your purpose. The mistakes you made didn't cancel your destiny. You're about to see God show out in your life. My father went through a great disappointment. He was married at a young age, and unfortunately, the marriage didn't work out. Denominational leaders told him that he would never pastor again, that failure had disqualified him. He eventually left his church and started selling insurance. He was very down on himself, living condemned, thinking that he had seen his best days. But the same God that came to the well for that woman that was broken and lonely came to my father. Daddy thought it was all downhill, that he would never pastor, never be in ministry, never have a family. But God said, if you only knew what I'm going to do, if you only knew you're going to meet Dolores Pilgrim, a young nursing student, and fall in love. If you only knew you're going to have 4 average children and 1 exceptional child. If you only knew you're going to pastor Lakewood and have influence around the world, you wouldn't live defeated, down on yourself because of mistakes, no passion because of those bad breaks. See, we get stuck in the heartache, the disappointment, the guilt, the shame. I should have done better. What was wrong with me? God knows we're human. Quit being so hard on yourself. Your mistakes didn't stop what God has planned for your life. You're not that powerful. If you could stop your destiny, none of us would make it. Abraham made a mistake, had a baby out of wedlock. that didn't stop the promised child. He's called the father of our faith. If he made mistakes and didn't miss his purpose, then you shouldn't beat yourself up because you've made mistakes. Now, I'm not saying about being loose and doing whatever you want, but when your heart is to please God, when down deep you want to do the right thing, but you make mistakes, that is not going to stop your purpose. What will stop you is if you start living condemned, down on yourself, no passion. That's why Jesus showed up and said to this woman, if you only knew what I'm about to do, if you only knew the gift I have for you, if you only knew who you are talking to. He was saying, I'm not just anyone. I'm the God who spoke worlds into existence. I'm the God who flung stars into space. I'm the God that crowned you with favor, that planned out your days for good. Jesus spoke faith into this lady. He could have condemned her. You're getting what you deserve. Too bad. It's just life. No, he said, get ready. I'm about to do something awesome in your life. You may have had your share of setbacks. You can come up with good reasons why you can't be happy, why you can't get married, why your business can't succeed. In your own strength, that may be true, but you're not on your own. The God who breathed life into you is saying, if you only knew the doors I'm about to open, if you only knew the favor I'm about to show you, if you only knew how I'm going to connect the dots, those things you don't understand, that were painful, that weren't fair, I saw them, and they're going to all work for your good. They're leading you to an amazing future, to something better than you've imagined.